Hi, this is Comet Troy coming to you from Linden Camp. So I tried a new idea here to speed up my video production. I decided that I needed to make a teleprompter, so here is my Redneck Teleprompter behind me, and I think it's going to work pretty well to help me get through my videos quicker and faster and more efficiently. So anyway, I've already created a couple videos for the construction of Linden Camp. This is going to continue on with parts 1 and 2. So part 1 was the purchase of Linden Camp that occurred last November, December of 2021, and then the subsequent planning of 2021. And we're going to continue on with that with the start of January of 2022. And you know, boy, did I make some missteps, I tell you. And you know, after the planning, I was excited. I wanted to get started with, start doing some dirt work, some excavation, and start putting a shovel to the ground. And so this is going to be a continuation of those first two videos. If you haven't watched them, I would suggest that you stop right here and go back and watch those two. And there's actually a playlist down in the description you can click on to watch all the videos from the beginning, and then this video will come back up, or it should come up in the proper order. If you've already watched the first two videos, then welcome back. So in today's video, we're going to talk about 5 things. First, we're going to talk a little bit about Linden to kind of give you a perspective on how rural the area is. Next, we're going to talk about the contractor landscape here. Thirdly, I'm going to tell you what not to do when hiring contractors in a rural area. And then I'm going to, the fourth part, I'm going to tell you what I did and kind of how it was some missteps I made and how I corrected them and what ended up working. And then finally, we're going to finish off with my recommendations of, what I think that you should do if you're going to hire an excavator in a rural area, or even some other excavators, and what I think works best. So with that, let's get right to it. So before we get started, I need to give some disclaimers. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax guy. I'm not a realtor in the state of Tennessee. I'm not a broker in the state of Tennessee. I'm basically a nobody. I'm a landowner. Yes, I do have a brokerage license in Wisconsin. That doesn't apply. It's not recognized by Tennessee. So what I'm saying in my disclosure is that you're really on your own to do your own due diligence. And the stuff that I present in my videos is strictly my opinion. And you need to do your own due diligence, talk to your own attorneys, get your own legal assistants, get your own tax people, accountants, whatever. Don't be blaming any stupid decisions on me just because I said it in a video. So with that, let's get right to it. So January came around and I'm like, well, all right, the path is pretty muddy to get in there, and the front of the building, the front of the property has been kind of cleared away. The developer did just enough work to make the property look presentable, in that they brought in a forestry mulcher, cut down, shredded up some trees, left a lot of debris hanging around, and it really wasn't too usable from a functional standpoint. Yeah, it looked nice, for the sale and that, but I needed to really do some real work and figure out the next steps. So to really do this video justice, I have to kind of put some context around the area here and how rural it is. Linden, very cool. Love Linden. It's a town of about 1,000 people, which is very similar to the town I grew up in, which was even smaller than Linden, 600. So I'm really familiar and really comfortable with the vibe here and just love it. So Linden is one of 2 incorporated communities in the entire county. And Linden is with 1,000 people, is the largest incorporated community of 1,000 people, and it's the county seat. Okay, the other incorporated community is Lobelville, which has 900 people, so 100 people less. And then they have 6 unincorporated communities out here. So a total of, 8 communities in this entire county of 8,300 people. So very, very rural. And the population density here is 18.1 people per square mile. Now, to put that in perspective, if we look at Los Angeles, probably not a real fair comparison, Los Angeles has over 7,000 people per square mile. So Perry County is very, very, very rural. So what does that mean for construction? So number one, there's few people here. So there's not a whole lot of construction needs. There's not a whole lot of new people migrating to the area. I should say there hasn't in the past been new people migrating to the area. Now that's all changing with the developer that's here bringing all these new people into town. So there's been in the past few construction needs and few contractor options. And one of the things that I really believe in, coming from a small town myself, is I really believe in investing back into the community. So hiring contractors that are local, live local, work local, frequenting stores, hardware stores that are local. And Linden, as far as I know, has maybe 1 or 2 excavating contractors. So there's not a whole lot of options, and if you were to hire an excavator, you might be pulling somebody from a neighboring county up by Nashville, which is an hour and 15 minutes away. Still doable, but you can get contractors way up there if you wanted to. But I personally like to be in a small town, rural farm boy, pull from the local community. That's kind of the foundation I wanted to lay out here with the area that I'm in. So then we have Tennessee Land and Lakes coming in, and they have, I'm not sure if I'm right on these numbers, but so this is a lot of rumor and hearsay, to be validated on your own. But I believe they have 150 wooded lots now, and they have more large acreage that they're going to divide up further when they get all those 150 sold for a total of 250 wooded lots. They also have some lots on Kentucky Lake, Tennessee River that they're selling, and I've heard that there's 100 lake lots down there. So, that's a potential of 250 new families coming in to Linden. Now, granted, they're not all moving here. I mean, some will. Some are going to use it for temporary vacation areas and whatnot. But the bottom line is that there's going to be a lot of new people coming to the area, and guess what? They're all going to have excavation, contracting, septic, electric, plumbing. They're all going to have those kind of needs all about the same time, because the way Tennessee Land and Lakes is doing their sales is it's like, 1 day sales, come in, boom, we got 20 new buyers, we got 30 new buyers, and they're doing that every month, twice a month, 3 times a month. So there's constantly new people migrating to the area. So what does that do to the existing contractors? Well, it makes a huge demand for a small supply. So the contractors that were doing excavation work, maybe doing some septic work, doing some trenching, they have enough of the preferred work they do. Sitting in an air-conditioned cabin, they may not necessarily want to do septic systems anymore because they have enough of the fun work or the higher paying work or the easier work or, whatever their preference is. So they are, declining septic systems, for example. So now you got people that focus on septic systems, and all of a sudden their demand is not only up because of the new people coming to the area, but now their demand is up because of all the contractors who used to do septic systems are no longer doing them. So it's crazy. You're waiting 2, 3, 4 months to have people come out and do work. And, that's kind of the lay of the land out here in rural Tennessee in this small community is kind of having a catalyst come in and explode the population. You know, it is creating a huge demand, and it's making it very difficult. Now, I got in there pretty early, so I got a head start in front of everybody else, but if you sit on your laurels, it's going to catch up to you. So I'm kind of doing this video to help people out. I made a lot of missteps in hiring contractors here for excavation work. And so we're going to start by talking about what not to do. So I've been a homeowner pretty much my whole life, and I've learned throughout the years to, you know, pick 3 contractors for a job and have them come in and, you know, get a written bid, a written estimate, get referrals and get everything written. And, you know, then of course I worked in corporate America where you document requirements and have everything laid out, and, you know, risk factors and spreadsheets and documents and yada, 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 right? So in January, I was coming out to the property. I'm like, all right, let's find 3 contractors and have them come out on site. And, you know, I got my kind of the idea, not to the, you know, the degree I just explained, but I got enough of it in my head that I can communicate to a contractor what I'm trying to do. And I'm not really sure how the whole excavation thing works. And, you know, I was hoping that they would kind of like, yep, know what you need. This is what you do, blah, 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 bing, bang, wada, boom, you know, whatever, and it's done. Well, it didn't work that way. So 3 contractors came out in January, and they're all eager to look at my project. We walked the land, and I'm like, over here is kind of where I'm thinking about putting a building, and this is where the road and driveway is going to go. And they're like, yep, mm-hmm. And then they're like, okay, what is this again? You know, what part is this? I'm like, okay, well, it kind of occurred to me that maybe I don't have enough detail laid out here. But anyway, I showed the contractors the project. And then at the end, typically it would say, well, you know, we got a John Deere 583921 dozer with, and a track hole that, you know, blah, 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 and a skid steer, and we charge $170 an hour for that, and $200 an hour for that, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God, my head's spinning. I'm like, I don't even know what that bulldozer is. I don't know how efficient these guys are. I just really had no clue of where to start. That's not the way that I learned to do things. But now, that wasn't in a rural area. My first home I owned was in Madison, Wisconsin, you know, where the contractors had a lot of competition for customers. So I asked the contractors, I'm like, well, do you guys do any fixed bid work? Because I'm thinking to myself, well, this time, how am I going to compare contractor A with contractor B with contractor C? I certainly just can't look at their hourly rate, even if I knew what the size of the machines were or whatever. It's just, there's no way to compare 2 contractors. So I asked them about fixed bid. They're like, yeah, we've done fixed bid before. I'm like, okay, well, you know, give me a fixed bid. I'd like to, you know, see what this is all going to cost me. I need to go to the bank and maybe get a construction loan. Like, okay, all right. So they all, you know, go back and they all come back with these bids. And the bids weren't as detailed as I would have liked to see. And I took responsibility for that. So like, well, I guess I probably just, you know, haven't defined the requirements well enough. And, you know, maybe I need to stake out, you know, where the building's going to go and where things are going to go. And, you know, maybe bring them back out here to take another look at it. And maybe I need to more define things, you know, documents and the spreadsheets and all that stuff I was talking about before that didn't work very well. So I went back and I developed this long requirements document, you know, 18, 20 pages. I literally spent hours and hours on it. And the other thing that, you know, was a lot more work than I originally planned was staking where the buildings were going to go before the land was cleared. I had to work around trees. I had to work around underbrush. There's a lot of these, you know, pricker vines that grow up out of the ground that were grabbing my tape measure and my strings. And, you know, I was constantly having to walk back and forth because it's just me out here doing this by myself, staking things out, you know, trying to navigate through trees and underbrush. And oh my God, I thought it would take me an hour. It ended up taking me a day and a half, probably 12 hours to stake it out. And, there's some pictures here of the staking work I did do. And then, oh my God, trying to get things square, because, you measure diagonally and, right triangles, a squared plus b squared equals c squared kind of a thing, and trying to figure out how the diagonal should be and trying to get everything square. And then I'd get it all laid out. I'm like, this corner's a little too close to the road, or the building's not quite right. So I'm like, I need to rotate this a few degrees. What a pain in the butt that was. And it ended up, did provide a lot of value, though, of just trying to visualize where things were going to go and work on the planning. So I went and did that, and I sent all the contractors a new requirements list. I'm like, okay, well, could you give me a little more detail, and here's kind of what I'm looking for. And I had 500 feet of trenching at 3 feet deep for electrical and 18 inches for water. And I tried to lay it out. I can't tell you how many hours I spent on this stupid document, and pictures and drawings, and it ended up being like 20 pages long. So I'm like, all right, well, let's just send this out and see what happens. So I send the document to all 3 contractors, and I think I alienated them. Let's go back to the beginning of this video. Okay, they have enough work. They don't need to be sitting poring over a 20-page requirements document trying to estimate a fixed bid project. So I kind of lost them all in the process. I didn't lose them all right away, but I'd go back and forth with emails. It was an email ping pong. Is this included? Is that included? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? How far back are you going to clear the land? And yada yada yada. And this went on started in the middle of January, went through February, and I got to the end of February, and I had no contractors dealing with me anymore. I'm like, ruh-roh. Now what I do? Do I go out to Nashville and bring in people from further away? I'm like, no, I gotta rethink this whole approach. So March came along, and I was really bummed because it just wasn't going the way that I wanted it to go, and I didn't really get any closer to actually hiring a contractor. So March came around. It was in Louisiana. It was getting warmer, and I'm like, okay, Tennessee is warming up a little bit, so I'm gonna go spend the month of April in Tennessee. And I was going to bring my RV up, right, and do off the grid on my land. Now, if you're watching my earlier videos, you'll know that I had a logging trail into my land, really muddy, and I had major concerns about getting my RV on the land itself. So I put my tail between my legs and went back to all 3 contractors mid-March. And I'm like, thank you guys for submitting your fixed bids to me. Yeah, that gives me a good idea of what to go to the bank with. So see what I did there? I covered my, me being an ass a little bit by requesting the fixed bid in the first place. I took a totally different approach, and I said, guys, I'm coming up there in April. I got the project bid type stuff I wanted to get. Thank you. I want to do some T&M time. I know you guys are really busy. If you can fit me in for a half a day, 4 hours, maybe a day between jobs, to come out and just build me an RV pad by the road. Thinking to myself, I just want to be able to park off the road and be on my property so I can get a handle and get things going. I offered T&M to all 3 of my original contractors, and one got back to me. I think the other 2, I had probably, pushed too far. He got back to me and says, yeah, we can maybe, help you out. Let us know when you get into town. So I ended up getting into town on April 1st. I stayed in a ball diamond near Linden camp the first night because it was late and it was dark. I arrived on site on April 2nd, which was a Saturday. And then Sunday, and I didn't want to bother the contractor on the weekend, so on Monday, April 4th, I reached out to the contractor, Swarey Excavating out of Linden, by the way. So Melvin, I'm in town, and he gets back to me on Wednesday morning and says, okay. He says, you got some time? I want to come back out and look at your project, see what you want to do with the RV thing. I'm like, yeah, come on out. And it was raining, right? I'm like, oh my God, this guy's going to come out in the middle of rain and we're going to go walk around the property. He ended up arriving. We both had umbrellas and, we're walking the property. And it was kind of fun, actually. So I take him through everything again, and I had everything staked off from before. So I was able to kind of show him, he wanted to see where the RV site was going to go. And then he wanted to see the rest of the stuff I wanted to do, which I'm thinking in my head, I just asked him for an RV site, so he's probably thinking for the future of how the RV site's going to fit into everything and this and that. So I showed him the RV site, took him through the rest of the stuff on that Wednesday. It's around 9 a.m. And then he leaves, and he comes back around 2 o'clock that same day. I'm back, working, doing my IT job. He comes back around 2 o'clock. And I get a text message. He's like, oh, I brought my oldest son back to take a look at the project. So I look out the window, and sure enough, they're out there walking around, and I get a break in my IT stuff. And so I go out and, walk around with him again and point out stuff again. And Melvin's oldest son, Carlin, was with him. So they're looking at the project. And well, let me just back up a little bit. Between the two visits, between when, Melvin was here and when he brought his oldest son out, I got a text message from him. He's like, well, how much of the project do you want to do? How much can you afford, really? I'm thinking, well, I asked for 4 hours, but if this contractor is offering me up time based upon my missteps the last 3 months, I'm going to take whatever he's got to offer. So I wrote him back. I'm like, Melvin, whatever availability you have, I will take. He's like, okay. Little did I know what I was in for. So he brings his oldest son, Carlin, back out that afternoon, and we're walking, looking at stuff. I'm not really sure exactly how the conversation went, but as we were out here, they told me that they had some availability and they were going to be out the next morning at 8 a.m. So this is on Wednesday afternoon. So they're telling me they're going to come out 8 a.m. to start doing some work for me. I'm like, hell yeah, this is going to be awesome. Little did I know that I was going to get them for 5.5 days of dozer and, track hoe and skid steer and dump truck time and all that. One of the things that concerned me about Swarey Excavating was, here I thought it was a contractor that was high in demand, and all of a sudden, you had all this time available. What I found out, though, was pretty interesting. So Tennessee in, March and April got a lot of rain, especially this area here in Linden, and everything was drenched. So the contractors really had a lot of difficulty with a lot of their projects because of how wet everything was. Now, Linden Camp is up on some ridges, so it's naturally drier than a lot of the other projects. So due to the abundant rainfall, which you think would normally be a detriment to getting excavators in, actually allowed my project to get prioritized over other projects that were underwater. So I didn't find that out until after they were done. I just got really lucky. And it's interesting how the way things work sometimes. Probably spilling the beans here a little bit, but I was super excited, and I had the RV kind of parked up by the road because there was mud puddles and stuff that I had to drive through. And Melvin and his son say, well, you're going to have to probably move your RV and motorcycle and truck out of the way if we're going to be clearing land and that sort of thing. So I'm like, sweet. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I got mud to go through. I started really getting concerned. I ended up taking the RV in the back of the property. And there's actually a video, Mud Tennessee style, down in the description. So after this video is done, you should go watch that to see what happened from this point forward. So this is April 6th. And that evening I had to move my RV and got it stuck. And oh my God, it was quite an ordeal. So highly recommend you go check that out after this video. My advice to anyone who's in this situation where you're hiring a rural contractor in an area that's being rapidly developed, here's what I recommend you do instead. If I had a time machine to go back in time, this is what I would have done. I would have started out the same way. I would have invited 3 contractors to come out. I would have walked the land with them, told them what I wanted to do. And then instead of focusing on fixed bid and time and materials, I would have picked their brain and got their professional thoughts on what to do, how they would do it, and if they had any ideas to do it better or if they had thoughts. The big question I had initially was, do I do forestry mulching or do I pluck the trees out of the ground? And some of the excavators wanted to bring in a forestry mulcher and grind the stumps down to below the surface. And other contractors wanted to bring in a track hoe and pull the trees out and then bury them or push them over into the hollers or haul them away or whatnot. And what I learned is, forestry mulching is quick, it's fast, it's not that expensive, but if you don't pull the root ball out, the trees are just going to grow right back and you'll be doing it every year. And if you're going to build a real building with a foundation, you got to get the stumps out anyway. It's typically not advisable to build a foundation on top of stumps. And that goes for roadways too and driveways. You don't want to be putting down chert or whatever over the top of stumps. I suppose you could probably do it, but it's not what I would do. So Melvin Swarey actually made a really good suggestion. He's like, Troy, why don't you just have the land cleared first? Let's get that done and get out of the way. And then you can come back in and do all your staking and figure that all out. And let's work on the next phase. So even though I had my plan broken up into 5 phases, it was suggested to break up phase 1 into more phases, which was very, very beneficial. I guess if I had to do it all over again, I maybe would have done the staking part, but not been so anal about getting things square and getting it positioned perfectly. And then how you click with them is with a customer-vendor type of relationship. That's pretty important. And okay, so I did have some of that in the first part. Ask a lot of questions. Don't worry about the time and materials is my advice. And forget the cost, forget the price. Just pick the favorite contractor that you gel with. That, it seems like you're on the same page. And just give them a try. And if it's a larger project and you're worried about hiring someone who's inept or incapable, well, then break your project up into smaller pieces. Have them come out for a half a day or for a whole day. What's the worst that can happen? You won't lose months like I did. They'll make some progress, even if they're totally inept. I ended up having Swarey Excavating come out and super happy with them. I got super lucky. They came out and I feel really bad for wasting the contractor's time with the whole fixed bid thing, but you learn, and I'm hoping to help other people who are in the same situation learn as well and do it smarter. So going forward, when I'm out here in rural Tennessee, when I'm looking for a contractor, do excavation work, especially when there's a whole bunch of unknowns, it's going to be time and materials. Now, there are things that are fixed bid capable, such as a septic system. They know how much foot of field line to put in. They know how much the tank is going to cost. It's a repeatable process. So putting a septic system or, drilling a well makes sense to do a fixed bid. That's what I would do differently. I guess my last piece of advice in closing out this video is, don't overthink your construction and try to have everything planned out from the beginning. You'll learn a lot as you go through it, and each phase will give you more information for the next phase. So don't try to have everything all planned out at once, and just kind of work through it in phases and enjoy the process. I know I am. So next, I recommend that you go watch that Mud in Tennessee video and watch me get stuck and get out of stuck and as the contractors were arriving. And then the next video, I promise, is going to be the actual Tonka trucks, if you will, arriving. I just say this, a lot of us kids had, the Tonka things, and it's super cool to see that stuff in real life appearing on semi-trailer beds and dump trucks and all that rolling up. So I promise the next video is going to be that heavy equipment, skid loaders, track hoes, bulldozers, dump trucks, and lots of fun. So if you found this video helpful, subscribe, ring the bell, and comment, like the video, and I will see you in the next video.